they probably felt, hey, we're set at quarterback for the next 10 years. We have Kirk Cousins, who's at the end of his career. We're going to transition easily and smoothly and seamlessly to Michael Penix. And now, after another ACL, you have to wonder, can you really say that Michael Penix is the guy going forward?
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday. That means we have the NFL Films legend, Greg Cosell, in the house for part one of the 2 days back-to-back. We talk with Greg every Thursday, every Friday, try to get to as many of the games as we can, certainly all the big ones, every single week to get the breakdown that, quite frankly, you can't get anywhere else. Decent amount of news to get to today as well. Major injuries for the LA Rams, who might be the best team in football. Quarterback news in a lot of places. The Jets, the Browns, the Falcons. A lot to get to, but first, always on a Thursday, we start with the guy I affectionately call the civilian GOAT, greatest of all time, Greg Cosell. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, so Greg, before we even get into any of these games, there's a couple of specific players I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on because I'm curious about your opinion on them. You know, obviously in Philadelphia, there's been a lot of conversation all year, and it's primarily his own doing about A.J. Brown. And I'm going to ask you tomorrow for your breakdown of the Eagles and the Cowboys, since that's a Sunday late game. I'll ask you that on tomorrow's show. But I'm curious, since I keep getting asked about it, and I have my opinion, but, you know, I don't want to say I value your opinion more than mine, but I highly value your opinion. So what is the tape showing you when you watch A.J. Brown play football this year?
Well, I don't think the A.J. Brown is really overly relevant to the conversation about the Eagles' passing game. I'm just totally confused and in many ways befuddled by the fact that the Eagles' passing game is so elementary and remedial in its concepts. You know me well enough to know I don't rip coaches. I don't do that. There's a reason. The question I keep asking myself is why? And I wish I knew the answer to that, Ross, and I'm being honest. I wish I knew why the Eagles' passing game looks like a ninth grade passing game in terms of concepts and route combinations. So that's the question that I keep asking myself, and I don't have an answer. But this is not an A.J. Brown question whatsoever. He's not relevant to this conversation.
Okay. So two things. One is, when I watch him, even when it's like pure man-to-man coverage, I mean, he's not getting open. Like Rock Ya-Sin was all over him. Amik Robertson was all over him.
Yeah, that's true to some extent. I think that's probably fair. But, you know, don't forget that good passing offenses create opportunities for receivers to get open. It's funny. This raises another question, which I always think about when I watch tape, and I don't want to spend, 10 minutes just on this. But when we watch a good passing offense and we see receivers that are somewhat open, okay, in the NFL, open is a relative term. Do we immediately say that's really good quarterbacking? Do we think in terms of that's really good scheming by the offensive coordinator? How do we think about that stuff? The Eagles don't really present opportunities for receivers to be open. And that to me, like I said, is very, very confusing as I watch their tape. Is A.J. Green probably very frustrated? I'm sure he is. I'm not going to speak to what he feels or what's in his head. But the overall issue with the Eagles is not A.J. Brown.
All right, so when you say it looks like a ninth grade passing game, remedial, elementary, Sirianni has been there the whole time.
And he's been with a lot of good, he was with Phillip Rivers. I mean, these coaches know this stuff. That's what's so befuddling.
Right. I mean, they were with Patullo and Sirianni were with Steichen for multiple years.
Yeah.
Who schemes guys up. They were with Kellen Moore. So when you say it's elementary and remedial, can you explain to the audience what that means?
Yeah. Well, you don't see a lot of route concepts and combinations in tandem. You don't see stacks. You don't see bunches. You don't see the use of motion to create potential confusion in the secondary and to create adjustments by coverage where they have to decide who's got who. The things that often create opportunities for receivers to get open. Because in this league, it just takes half a beat, and if the defense doesn't react exactly right, a receiver's open. You don't see those things. It's a lot of just static routes where receivers run to a spot or just trying to win one-on-one, which, you know what? Hey, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It's still the NFL. The corners can cover guys at times. Even the great receivers don't win one-on-one all the time. I just finished watching the Titans defense versus the Texans offense. And you know what? Nico Collins was covered quite a few times one-on-one by corners people probably haven't even heard of. That happens in the NFL. Everybody's pretty good. You played, Ross. Everybody's pretty good. So they don't do anything that really creates opportunities for receivers to be open and for clean looks for the quarterback. You don't see that on their tape.
Really interesting observation. Makes you wonder, like to your point, why are they doing that? Do they think their talent is just that good that those guys should be able to win those one-on-one isolation rounds?
Like I said, I'm not knocking anybody. I don't do that. The question is why. That's what the tape shows. I can only tell you what the tape shows. I'm not making a judgment. I'm not, like I said, I'm not ripping anybody. Here's what the tape shows. They don't do this. It's not on tape.
Couple other guys I wanted to ask you about before getting in these games. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it later in the news, but Michael Penix Jr.
Yep.
Has a torn ACL again.
Yeah.
And he's having season-ending surgery. I guess I'm curious, he played the last few games last year. He played most of the games this year. They're in a weird spot now. I don't even know what the Falcons do now.
I know.
What have you seen from him? It didn't seem like it was that great this year. What have you seen from Penix Jr. this year?
It was uneven. One interesting thing about Penix, he has such a good arm. If you're just looking at the pure arm, but one of the things I noticed watching him, because he's essentially a pocket quarterback, and he'll try to come back, obviously, and he'll be even more of a pocket quarterback because this is his third or fourth ACL, I believe. So he's very, what's the best way to describe it? He's very lower body stiff in terms of his set in the pocket. It almost looks like his feet are set in cement. There's not a looseness to his lower body. That could well be a function of the lower body injuries that he's had. You can't imagine that's going to be better after this. But I loved what you said. The Falcons are in a very interesting spot. My guess is when they drafted Penix with the 8th pick in the draft, which at the time was a surprise, they probably felt, hey, we're set at quarterback for the next 10 years. We have Kirk Cousins, who's at the end of his career. We're going to transition easily and smoothly and seamlessly to Michael Penix. And now, after another ACL, you have to wonder, can you really say that Michael Penix is the guy going forward? I'm certainly not a doctor, but his performance this year was uneven. He had some really good moments, and he throws a great ball, but then he also had some down moments as well.
Fascinating. I mean, the criticism, Greg, of the Falcons was that there was a redundancy.
Yes.
And it was unnecessary to have two quarterbacks like that. The reality is they might have zero.
Right.
I mean, they might not have a quality starter.
Right.
When everybody thought, why are you doubling down? You have Cousins, and now you have Penix. I mean, it's like there's no way they thought there was a scenario where neither guy is the guy.
It makes you wonder, and we'll get into this, obviously at draft time, but it makes you wonder now if they feel they have to draft a quarterback relatively high, because Penix I read something where they're saying it's going to be a 9-month deal. So I mean, he's probably not going to be ready next year. Even if the operation goes great and he's healthy.
So I'm probably going to ask you on tomorrow's show about the Browns and the Raiders. I know it's a pair of 2-8 teams, and I'm sure it's not going to be featured on the
You
NFL
must be doing
matchup
that
show.
game this week, Ross.
But what's that?
You must be doing that game then.
I
huh?
am doing that game. I'm greedy, and I every week if I'm doing a game, I'm going to get your take on that game for sure. But I think a lot of people are really curious to just hear what you thought of Shedeur Sanders' first NFL playing time in the second half against the Ravens.
Tomorrow.
What's that?
I said I have a thought on the Raiders too, so we can do that tomorrow.
Oh, okay. What do you have on Shedeur?
Well, it's funny. He's in a super difficult position. First of all, he's probably had no first team reps all season long. Then he goes into a game, and what does he get? He gets Zach Orr dialing up pressures that he's never seen before, has no concept of understanding them in the amount of time that's necessary. It plays into his tendency to hold the ball anyway, which you saw in college. So he had no chance. You can't really blame Shedeur Sanders for being 4 for 16 and getting sacked, whatever number of times it was. He had no chance whatsoever. That's not really on him. And again, this will be his first week taking all the reps with the first team. I'm sure you're going to talk to coaches if you haven't started to already on the staff. You'll get a better feel for what they're going to try to do with him this week and how they're going to try to help him. The one thing they do have going for them is they do normally have a pretty good run game with Judkins, and that's going to have to be the foundation without question.
All right, let's get to tonight's game, Greg. And yes, I am going to ask you about the Raiders tomorrow, but I'll save that for tomorrow. The Bills and the Texans. Greg, Josh Allen had one of those games. By the way, he still had 2 bad interceptions, but he had one of those games where 6 touchdowns. He put Superman's cape on. Now they play the Texans without without C.J. Stroud. It'll be Davis Mills yet again. What are you looking at in tonight's game, Bills-Texans?
This is a fascinating game because I can make the argument watching every play in great detail that Josh Allen did not have a great game. He had 6 touchdowns, and obviously there were some Superman plays. But even, for instance, the 43-yard touchdown to Shavers, it should never have gotten there. That he dropped back, and it was 3rd and 3, and Gabe Davis was wide open in the context of the route concept. He looked right at him. He didn't throw it. There's a lot of those kinds of plays. He's a fascinating study, Ross, because he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the league. To me, that's not even a question. And he makes incredibly special plays, but there's too many, what I would view, and I'm sure if you were talking to the Kurt Warners of the world, they would view it the same way, that are routine plays that he doesn't make. And I think tonight's game is interesting in that he's playing against a really, really good defense that has really good players at all 3 levels. And this is not going to be an easy game at all for the Bills offense. And again,
the Texans might have the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah,
they are elite.
Yeah, I don't make predictions. I'm not going to sit here and say, what's going to happen, because I could give you 10 variables on both sides of the ball, as in these games based on film study. But, this is not going to be an easy game for Josh Allen and the Bills offense within the structure. Now, maybe tonight's a game where people might say, well, Josh has to be Josh and try to make those plays. And you know what? Maybe that's the way it'll turn out. But you can't count on those plays every week. I guarantee that Joe Brady, leading up to, and obviously they don't really practice this week because it's late in the season. So it's more film study, classroom work, maybe some walkthroughs. But they're not rolling the ball out and saying, Josh, run around against Houston and let's see what happens. They're not saying that. So, they still have to come up with plays within structure to attack a defense that's really good.
It's weird what you said about him passing up some easy throws.
He does that a lot.
Well, and what's weird about that is, he's played a lot of football now, and he's been in the system with Joe Brady for a while now. He knows what's supposed to happen.
Of course he does. Yeah.
So if it's not happening, it's because he thinks he can do more, and in this game he did.
Right. And you know what? For instance, against the Miami, he didn't. And, so he's so good that it seems like he does it more than he doesn't. But on the other hand, you just don't know.
The fascinating thing there, Greg, is at some point, his physical ability is not going to be to this level.
Right.
And the question will be, how good is he then?
Right.
How good is he at age 37? Because even, I'll give him a lot of credit. I don't know what you thought of him when he was younger, Greg, but Stafford has very much become a thinking man's quarterback, and he still has that good arm. But Stafford, I think, is winning a lot of these things with his brain
Without
first.
question. That's the position you want to be in as a quarterback, Ross. And I remember having this conversation with Phil Simms where you want the mental part to become so high level, but the physical part is still there. That doesn't happen with a lot of quarterbacks. But Stafford's one of those guys that it's still like that. He still is an unbelievably good thrower of the football, and mentally he's as good as there is.
All right, let's talk about the Steelers and the Bears. The Bears just keep winning. Caleb Williams keeps avoiding sacks.
Yeah.
He's going to have to do that in this game because the Steelers are pretty good at getting pressure typically. We don't know whether it'll be Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph at quarterback. I'm curious as to what stands out the most to you in this contest.
Well, it was fascinating to watch Caleb Williams last week. I actually thought he played pretty well. He played against a Vikings defense that was super aggressive with 5 and 6 man pressure concepts. 24 of Williams' 36 dropbacks, they came with pressure. He was sacked only one time. He's obviously incredibly strong in the pocket. He has this almost Roethlisberger ability to shed tacklers and then make something happen. But he throws the ball extremely well. His 2 best throws were drops. He would have had better numbers. He made a throw to Burden on a dig route that was an unbelievable throw that he dropped. He put it right between the numbers. I think he's clearly improving. I think he looks more comfortable. You made a great point. The sacks. He's not getting sacked. And last year he got sacked a ton. In college he got sacked a ton. And that's a really positive sign. Because studies have been done by teams in the league that quarterbacks that get sacked a lot in college, the tendency and the percentage is they get sacked a lot in the NFL. And that's not happening this year with Williams. I think he's making very, very good progress.
I'm amazed. He's a better athlete than I thought he was. I'm amazed at some of the sacks that he's gotten out of this year. Last year, he went down. Last year, they got him, and I thought, boy, he's not as athletic as he thinks he is. They're getting him, and this year he's kind of I don't want to say he's figured it out, but he's avoiding him. He's evading him.
He's very strong in the pocket. I mean, there are guys that are on him, and he just, like I said, it's almost like Ben Roethlisberger early in his career.
All right, let's talk Vikings-Packers, Greg.
Yeah.
Because people in Minnesota right now are freaking out. They let Darnold go. They didn't do enough to bring Daniel Jones back. J.J. McCarthy was the guy they handpicked with the first-round pick. He has 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Some of the incompletions are ugly, Greg. I guess I'm curious, what do you have for the Vikings fans?
Well, he's got some significant mechanical issues with his lower body, and I'm not a coach, so I can't speak to how fixable it may or may not be. You and I think, have discussed this, but I'll try to explain it very clearly so people can understand. In all sports, if you're a golfer, I'm sure a lot of people listening are golfers. I'm not a golfer, but I played baseball. Everything starts with your core and your hips and your ability to transfer your weight. And, just think about it. Are you a golfer, Ross?
No, but I know what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about. And so he is what we call a locked front leg thrower. So what happens is when he steps into his throw, his front leg locks. That stops your lower half from moving forward. It's like stepping into a wall. Your leg locks and your hips and your core can't go with you. So what happens is there's no core torque, there's no weight transfer. So if you notice when he throws, he ends up kind of whipping his back leg when he throws the ball because there's no core torque, there's no weight transfer. So what that leads to, 2 things. Number one, it leads to less than precise ball location, which we've seen consistently. And on certain throws, not every throw, it leads to a drop in velocity. Now, I actually think in just pure arm strength, like if you just took his arm as like a separate, entity, a separate appendage, I actually think he's got a very strong arm. But it doesn't play out that way all the time because of the way he throws the ball. Now, I don't know if that can be fixed. But if it can't be fixed, it's an issue that will always be there. And at times, maybe not every week, it depends on, on games and situations, but at times it's going to prevent him from making routine NFL throws.
Very interesting, of course. He's another one. We were talking about Penix Jr. earlier. On some level, Greg, J.J. McCarthy kind of needs to prove himself the rest of this season.
Yep.
Because the Vikings are going to have to make some type of decision. They're not going to draft another guy, but whether or not they bring in a veteran to compete with him or what they might do this offseason, which is fascinating. All right. Anything else about that game, though, Greg? Maybe on the Packers side?
I actually think that Jordan Love has played well this year. I know there's been some talk, where their offense hasn't necessarily scored a lot of points, but I think the tape shows that he's played pretty good football. I think for the most part, he's become a much more controlled, calculated player. It's only his third year as a starter, and I think a lot of people lose sight of that. It takes time to develop. He's in the same system, which is a very good thing, so he's going to keep learning and learning. I've had many coaches tell me, Ross, that it takes 3 years in one system to really become totally fluid and understand every element of your system and then understand defenses and what they're trying to do to you, and he's getting that knowledge. So they have not run the ball as well this year as Matt LaFleur would like, because he's a run-first guy, and I don't know what Jacob's status is this week, but even so, he hasn't really, the run game, I don't want to say it's the problem's Jacob's. The run game hasn't been as strong as it was the last couple of years, but I actually like the way Love has played.
Check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod or me at Ross Tucker NFL. Please like, subscribe, turn the notifications on so you get Greg right away, including tomorrow when we go over some of these other epic games. Yes, I'm going to ask him about my game, but there's some other games. Colts, Chiefs, certainly Eagles, Cowboys, Bucks, Rams, Niners, Panthers on tomorrow's show. Should be awesome. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Ross.
All right, let's dive into the news, but first, you guys know I love the Game Time app. My game this week, Browns at the Raiders. I'm looking, and there's still some very affordable tickets. Those of you watching on youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. As a reminder, especially if you're going to be in Vegas, use the Game Time app to see all the other amazing shows and events you can go see in Vegas, which would be incredible. You're taking the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ROSS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account, redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. You know I love that the fees are included, that you can see the view from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time app, code ROSS, ROSS. If you guys saw my social media at Ross Tucker NFL over the weekend, you saw I was drinking my beloved Labatt Blue Light, because that's what I do, because it's the best tasting light beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just go to the website, snap a photo of your receipt, and upload it instantly to rack up points for exclusive merch. Love when you guys send me pictures of not only your Labatt Blue Light, but the product you got, the merch you got from rewards.labattusa.com.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, some news around the league. Shedeur Sanders, he's officially starting for the Browns this week, as well as Tyrod Taylor for the Jets.
Well, Greg and I certainly talked earlier about Shedeur Sanders. I'm very excited about that because I'm doing the game for CBS. So I think there's a lot of excitement around how Shedeur will do with his first start, in getting all the reps this week, the game plans designed around him. So I'm as excited as anybody to see how he does. As for the Tyrod Taylor thing, I talked about that earlier in the week. It makes absolutely no sense to me that Aaron Glenn hid who the starting quarterback was the last couple weeks when everybody kind of thought it would be Fields because they had won a couple games. And then now the week you're going to change it, it leaks out on Monday that it's going to be Tyrod Taylor. I would have kept that quiet as long as I could have, but I don't know. They don't ask me.
Something you guys talked about earlier, Falcons quarterback Michael Penix Jr., he's having season-ending ACL surgery. He's done for the year.
Well, I just feel awful for him to have now torn his ACL in some way, shape, or form 3 times. That seems very, very unfair. I guess the flip side for me, from a practical standpoint, is I'm actually thrilled he was able to come back from 2 of them in college and be a top 10 pick and get life-altering money. Because a lot of guys don't have that opportunity. He might not get a big second contract, but at least he should be set for life as a top 10 pick.
Both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Amari DiMercado are out for the Cardinals this week.
What a disappointing year for Arizona. I mean, their schedule was so easy to start the year. They had, it seemed like a golden opportunity to get off to a great start, to have an awesome year. Instead, they're very clearly the worst team in that division.
The Colts, they're getting corner Charvarius Ward back this week, and the Saints, they've released wide receiver Brandon Cooks.
The releasing of Brandon Cooks is weird because they could have traded him like 2 weeks ago and gotten something in return for him. By the way, he then would have set the record for most times traded by an NFL player. And the Colts getting Charvarius Ward back is big. They love him. Now they have Charvarius Ward and Sauce Gardner on the outside with Kenny Moore on the inside. That is big to get Ward back.
And the Rams, they put DB Quentin Lake, tight end Tyler Higbee, and offensive tackle Rob Havenstein on IR.
That's a lot. I mean, that's not just 3 starters. That's 3 good starters that the Rams have lost. I think they're the best team in football, but it's not easy for anybody to start to lose that volume of quality starters. Other than that, I'm already excited for not only tonight's game, but Greg Cosell again tomorrow. I think we're done here. Don't go anywhere. Got to pay some bills real quick. Here's the thing about Smirnoff vodka. It goes so well with anything, and they are already trying to help you out. Just grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. All kinds of awesome cocktails. Please drink responsibly. It's Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. The key, though, is that Smirnoff vodka mixes perfectly with whatever you want. You want a little screwdriver with orange juice in the morning. You want a little vodka soda, vodka tonic, cranberry vodka a little bit later in the day. How about a Bay Breeze, Sea Breeze? It's Smirnoff.com.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com, backofficescheduler.com, humanetnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.